Hi, my name is Jim, and I was retired. Welcome back to part 3 of my tour of a do-it-yourself spreadsheet that I've designed to manage withdrawals in my early retirement. Could withdrawal rates of 6 and 7% be right? Stay tuned and I'll explain why the 4% rule isn't on my spreadsheet. Stay tuned for my D.I.Y. retirement withdrawal strategy, part 3. After I was retired 5 years ago, I did a lot of research on the internet looking for a do-it-yourself approach as an alternative to high-priced, expensive, fee-only financial planners. And as you know, I've decided to build my own D.I.Y. retirement withdrawal strategy. In part 1, I introduced the input screen on how you set up all of the basic information in the spreadsheet. And in part 2, I introduced you how I built the main sheet or base case of the spreadsheet. In part 3, I'm going to go back to that main sheet and show you the formulas that I use for withdrawals, for earnings, and if I have enough time, estimated income and estimated taxes. So follow along. But before I do, I should begin with my standard word of caution. I am not a financial planner. I am not a CPA. I have no extra credentials after my name. So take this as entertaining ideas from one educated consumer to another. Always do your own due diligence and seek out a professional if you need to. Oh, and by the way, please like and subscribe to this channel. The more subscriptions, the higher it will be in the search results, and the more this information will reach people who are in a forced early retirement. Okay, so let's review the main sheet that we began in part 2. As you recall, I created a new on-screen example and showed you how I structured the rows with the information about years and ages, and then the column headings for all of the accounts for deferred, tax-free, and taxable accounts, added these 3 income columns for fixed income, pension, and Social Security, and then created the columns for withdrawals and deposits, for earnings, and ended up with total available income, expenses, and shortfalls. But all of that is just setting up the column headings. I have a few more columns to end up creating on the end for taxable income and estimated taxes, and I'll get to that, but I'm going to jump over to show you how these formulas really work to the main sheet that I've created here. And so as you recall, the formulas for these first ones really just pulled the data over from Quicken, and then I put in zeros here for the fixed income sources for the beginning. But I'm going to begin with showing you the formula here for the withdrawal calculations that I make based on the spreadsheet function payment. Now, here is the formula, and it's not only down here on the screen, but also here. And I know that looks Greek, so I'm going to insert a slide here that'll show you the formula in detail. So while I'll admit this looks complex, it is really just a simple syntax with an if statement. And the slide explains that the if statement says that if your age is less than 72, then take the estimated payment. Otherwise, use an RMD. Ignore that ref code there for now. Now, what is the PMT formula? Well, the PMT formula returns an amount that would last 30 years based on the present value of the IRA. In this formula, we use the real CAGR rate of return from the input screen for the periodic rate. We use the number of years in retirement from the input screen. And then we use the present value of the IRA. In this payment formula, we're omitting the future value and the when due date variables and just hitting return. So in this example, the result comes back of a withdrawal of $27,225 based on the IRA balance over here and those variables in the payment formula. And then you simply just pull this thing down and it automatically switches to the RMD when you hit 72. I color these fields in later just to remind me that these are in the RMD category. So what does that RMD formula do? So this last phrase here takes the balance of the IRA and divides it by a periodic factor that comes off this RMD screen. And I'm going to show that to you over here. These are RMD factors that are created by the IRS, and these are the most current data for 72 on and 27.4. So if you take the 300,947 balance in E17 and divide it by the 27.4, you get the 10,983 here, which represents the RMD from this IRA when you're 72. Now, the 401k and the spousal IRA all work the same way for the formulas, and the annuity works a little bit similar. I'm actually just putting this in as a proxy. I know that the annuity will annuitize to a payment somewhere in this ballpark, and I'm just using this until we take that fixed income annuity and turn it into an annuity for my wife at the age of 65. Withdrawals from the Roth 401k is subject to RMDs, and so it's important that we move those over to the Roth IRA before the age of 72, and these transactions do that. A withdrawal here and a deposit here, and that's a clean rollover transfer between the 401k and the IRA in the Roth world. Now, the broker and savings withdrawals, all I'm doing there when I get to the end is making sure that I hit close to break even on the surplus shortfall after taxes. So I'll ignore those for now, but it goes through and calculates a withdrawal, a total withdrawal. So we go through, and this summarizes the total withdrawals for the year, summarizes R4 through Z4. And the withdrawal rate is calculated by taking the total withdrawals and dividing it by the total retired assets. And that gives you close to 6% in this year. And as you can see, I'm in 6 and 7% here before Social Security kicks in at 70, and I have a pension that begins at 65 here in this model. So it can make sense to ignore the 4% rule if you've got reasons to wait for being below 3% once Social Security kicks in. Now, earnings is a simple formula here. The earnings are the balance plus any withdrawals times the real rate of return from our input screen. And I'm using that in all of the earnings columns except 2, and I'll show you those here. This one is timesing it by 3% because the annuity is a fixed income annuity. It's past its surrender period, and I know it's contractually obliged to give us 3% a year for that annuity. So I've entered that. And then on savings, savings aren't really invested. They're on the side. They're in your bucket 1. And I struggled with what to put there for the right rate. And I decided I'm putting 0.5% because I know I can at least get a Marcus online savings account that'll pay me 0.5%. If you don't have Marcus, use the code below and try them out. It really is a convenient way to save and get a lot more interest than brick and mortar banks. This gives you a sum of all the total earnings. Total available income, though, is different. Total available income to you as a retiree is all your fixed income sources. Right now there's zero in the pension and Social Security columns, plus the withdrawals that you've decided to make. And here it's important that you turn it negative somehow. One way is to times it by -1. It'll turn it negative. So the withdrawals are negative over there in the withdrawal column. They become a positive here when they're now your income. Expenses are off the input screen, and it's used in the calculation of that CAGR result. And that gives you a shortfall or surplus, but that's all before taxable income. So let's look at the formula for taxable income. I have it here, but I'll also show it on a slide. And the taxable income is the sum of your pension, 85% of your Social Security payments, both the main Social Security primary benefit and the spousal benefit, the earnings in your brokerage and savings accounts, plus the taxable withdrawals from your tax-deferred accounts. That adds up to your taxable income. Now, next time, I'll show in greater detail how I use this number to go calculate the estimated state and federal taxes, estimate the taxes, add up expenses and taxes, and come up with a shortfall or surplus. So join me next time when I go through the details of estimated income and estimated taxes on this retirement withdrawal strategy. Hey, be sure to like and subscribe to this channel and hit that bell notification over there so that you'll get notified when I do part 4 of my DIY retirement withdrawal strategy. I cover topics like these on how to manage a forced early retirement. That's why I call this channel I Was Retired. If this is of interest to you, please be sure to follow along. Thanks.